Health Outreach. And we're very grateful to have everyone here tonight for this very important community meeting. And so, Dwayne, who's going to be? Thank you. So we're going to get more into what some of this collaborative social accountability is. It might sound like, but it's not that difficult to understand. Sorry, that's okay. That's not us. Okay. So just to get started, we do have grievance mechanisms. And so if anyone has an issue, and just so that you understand, this is an issue with the organization, something with the presentation, something that you have a problem with, you can submit complaints. So this is our whole process of submission. It's on our website. And so we have, you submit a complaint, we will review it and address it. And if that does not meet your needs, then you have a second level of redress to on a higher level and then to the final level. So like I said, this is on our website. If anybody wants more information, it's available. Next, please. And so in this presentation, we didn't do any agenda handouts just because we're saving paper and they always just get thrown away. So we just made it simple by presenting it up here. So we are going to just briefly introduce what this project is about, which is the investment that the World Bank has invested in the Caribbean through the Global Partnership for Social Accountability and the Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund, and they are our donors, so our gratitude to them. We're going to talk about biodiversity and how the project is working towards conservation for what is referred to as our key biodiversity areas, which we all important to every one of us. And we're going to look at what policies, laws, acts, and actions are currently in place, and then how we can all participate to work together to improve conservation and biodiversity. And then we're going to have a final discussion on service delivery. So that's about a quick summary. Next, please. Thank you. And so I'm going to do a quick introduction, and then we're going to have a quick introduction by the president of the organization, our lovely Mrs. Brenda Thomas Odlum. So like I said, I'm the executive director, and the organization was founded in 2013. And we do a lot of work in terms of all areas of well-being and environmental well-being, social well-being, women's well-being, youth well-being, and because all of them intersect to make for healthy and environments. And so now I'm just going to pass over the mic to our lovely president. Yay!
Good evening, everyone. I'd just like to welcome each and every one of you from the various organizations. We're here, the Integrated Health Outreach. Our core values are there. I would go into them, but the one that we'll be focusing on this evening is community and capacity building as it relates to the environment, because the environment affects each and every one of us for our livelihood, for our food, for our health, basically everything that you think about. So we want your input, because if we're not sure as to what your concern is, we can look from outside, but we need to know what is your concern so that we can have solutions for those concerns. So we're looking at why we choose Parham, basically because of the NEMA area, which is the Northeastern Marine Management Area, and that is from Shell Beach right up to Mill Reef. So the communities within those areas are part of the NEMA area. So we invited persons from those areas, and especially since Parham is one of the fishing village, that is a livelihood for many persons in the eastern area. We need to see how it affects you, what are your major concerns, and then we'll be able to work together to find solutions for those concerned. So without any further ado, this is the team. Yeah, this is our team. We have a few persons on Zoom, and we're expecting some others due to the funeral services, many of them that promised, yes, the funeral service of Mrs. Michael. They would have been here late. So without any further ado, I'll just, with everything, I make sure that we put God first. So let us bow our head where we are and say a word of prayer, after which I'll hand it back over to our director. Oh, kind and most merciful Father, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for health and strength. Thank you for the groups. Thank you for the sponsors who fund the projects that we are having. And pray, dear God, that as we try to find solution, that we'll have full participation tonight so that we can make a difference in the various communities, especially in the NEMA area. Have mercy on each and every one of us and take us home safely after this meeting. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Mrs. Odlum. So the next slide quickly. And so I talked a little bit about the organization already. We can flip to the next. And so we want to thank, of course, our donors. The Global Partnership for Social Accountability is a part of the World Bank that works towards improving governance and the relationship between government and the communities for transparency and accountability. Next slide. And then we're also, our second donor is the Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund. And they've already been donors in the region for biodiversity and conservation. This is their second investment in the Caribbean area. And their work is to protect biodiversity and conservation. And they had a previous project with EAG a few years back, and this is their second investment. You can flip. And so the project is going to go up until 2025. This started in September of 2021. And so we're just about a year into it. It's a regional project. Antigua and Barbuda and the Dominican Republic are partners and leading the project. And it's also going to be implemented in Jamaica and St. Lucia years 2 to 4, and in the 3rd to 4th year, it's going to be in the Bahamas, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Haiti. So it's a very important project that we're working together regionally to see a change, and so that's why it's so important. And we're thankful for everyone coming in and participating. And so I'm going to hand this over to our lovely one of the coordinators in the project, Oriel Hunt.
Good night. So I'm just here to do a background on biodiversity. I know everybody may have varying backgrounds, so just to bring everybody up to speed. So just some of the terms you may hear, the first one being biodiversity. So when we're talking about biodiversity, we're looking at a variety of living species on Earth. So your plants, animal, bacteria, your fungi. The thing with our species, they're not evenly distributed around the world. Some areas are more blessed than others. You also have areas that have high variety of endemic species, meaning they are found nowhere else in the world. It shows a blessing. So example in Antigua, like our Antigua racer snake or the Barbuda wobbler. Another one you may hear is a biodiversity hotspot. We can look at those as areas that are irreplaceable and also threatened. So they have a high level of biodiversity, but they're also very threatened when it comes to like destruction. So there are 36 biodiversity hotspots around the world. The Caribbean is one of them, and that's where we are. And in the Caribbean, we have a high percentage of globally threatened species. So there are about 11,000 species of plants, of which 72% of those are endemic, as in they're only found in this region. And you also have around 564 species of birds, of which 26% of those are endemics. Bringing it home. So as you go out, when you go into your backyard, you know, we have a large number of like floras and faunas. The Barbuda wobble is the one at the bottom that I was telling you about. But our biodiversity in Antigua is very threatened. So that could be due to developments of land, whether that's for tourism or agriculture, invasive species. So we all know about the giant African snail, a lionfish, lemongrass, which a lot of persons don't know is also invasive. Climate change impacts as well a lot on our biodiversity, and also outer more lack of awareness. So those are just some of our threats to biodiversity in Antigua. One ecosystem that I'm going to highlight are mangroves. So we've seen them. I know a lot of persons think, oh, they just smell. What's the purpose of them? And I'm sure if, as you're driving up the back road to Parham, you pass the one that's right there with all the rubbish and everything, because we don't see the use of it. So there are 4 types of mangroves in Antigua. You have the black, white, red, and your buttonwood mangroves. We know mangroves serve a lot of purposes for us. In the case of, they serve as nurseries and habitats for a lot of species. So it helps there, especially think about like our fishers who depend on that industry. So mangroves are good for that. The thing with our mangrove population in Antigua, it has been decreasing over the years. So there was a survey before the 1980s, the amount of mangroves that were in Antigua and Barbuda was over 4,900 hectares. A survey was done between 1980 and 1991, and that number fell to about 1,500 and then later to 1,175 hectares. According to the FAO in 2005, our approximate amount is around 700 hectares. So we can see how our numbers have changed over the years. Okay. So biodiversity, as we said, has a lot of importance. So human health and well-being, there's a lot of services that we get from it. So just being able to go outside in nature, going for your walk, going for your hike, bird watching, really great activity. Economic prosperity as well. We get a lot from biodiversity. So think of your fishers and your farmers, also the food that we get from that. And there are a lot of other services that it provides. So think of ecosystem services like cycling of nutrients, water purification, climate regulation. So as Nicola mentioned, we have several KBA sites in Antigua, so key biodiversity areas, Northeast Marine Management Area in Fidges Creek Bay, Redondo, Codgerton Lagoon and the Creek, Hanson's Bay, McKinnon Salt Pond, and Bethesda Dam. For this project, we'll be focusing on the NEMA and Fidges Creek Bay, as well as Redondo, but tonight we will just be looking at the NEMA and Fidges Creek Bay, which is where we are. So this is just a little background on the NEMA. So the NEMA encompasses 10,475 hectares of marine and coastal areas. It includes around 28 islands. It was declared a marine reserve in 2005 under the 1983 Fisheries Act. And of course, we know there are a lot of activities that happen within the NEMA. So whether that's yachting or going on day tours and diving, fishing, kayaking. But there are also a lot of critical ecosystems. So as we said, on mangroves, coral reefs, seagrass beds, and of course, you have a lot of species of concern. So our racist snake, our hawksbill turtles, and our West Indies whistling duck. And just like other places, it's also under threat due to habitat alterations, development, overcrowding, unsustainable daily activities, pollution, and improper disposal of waste, which we know is a really big one.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So now we transition into policies, actions. And I know sometimes when we see the word policies, we immediately think it's law school. But I'd just like to get some quick feedback from you. How many persons are from Parham? Show of hands. Just get a sense. And if you're from Fidges Creek area. Okay, and what about NEMA in general? Okay, great. And so NEMA is a very important area, and there are policies and guidelines that have been put in place to protect sites like NEMA. You have a number of important groups. So for example, the EAG has played a tremendous role in gathering data. I see Shanna here, Challenger. So thank you for all the work that you all do. But in terms of policies, we first want to get into what policies are on the books. So this is good because it helps in terms of our direction. The first one we want to look at is the biodiversity strategy and action plan. Now, this is important because if it's on the book, if it's an act, if it's a law, we can be guided by it. It's something that can and should be enforced. So these policies are generally several pages long. And so what we have done is we've condensed some of the commitments that you find in these policies in terms of commitment to the environment or what they plan to do to protect it. So in the biodiversity strategy, you have the establishment of necessary policies and legal frameworks to protect the country's biodiversity. So we would expect to find these policies and frameworks in place. And we do. We see the Environmental Protection and Management Act. There's also the Fisheries and Forestry Act. And these acts will ultimately help to guide them. So those policies have common stream. In terms of strengthening the capacity of government's natural resources, we'll look at that a little bit more closely. Our next commitment is that the public should be involved in the decision-making process. So that is a commitment that was made in this act, as well as in the Environmental Protection and Management Law. Now, in terms of project progress being made, as we said, the frameworks are in place. As it relates to gap areas, we see that there is a gap in the public participation process. Now, the name of this session is we would want to hear from you. That is one of the important themes of tonight. We want to hear from you. And so we want to get feedback from you in different areas. So as we go through, just take mental notes or actual notes as we go along. Another gap area is to strengthen the capacity of NGOs and also community groups. Now, when we move on to the Environmental Protection and Management Act, it speaks to things like access to environmental information. So any type of information about the environment and pollution or anything that has to do with the environment that we live in, you should be able to access it from the relevant government bodies. In addition to that, there was a commitment made to establish a management and advisory system, EIMAS, also a commitment for public awareness about the environment and biodiversity. And finally, you have the establishment of a protected area system. Now, based on those commitments made, here is the progress that we see coming out of that particular act. Information is available on the Department of Environment website. If you go on the website right now, you'll see information on reports and data and so forth. And there's also an avenue to request more from the data unit. The management unit was established about 12 years ago. And in terms of public awareness, we see that there have been efforts to involve the community in public awareness, sometimes in partnership with groups like the EAG. Now, in terms of gap areas, we see that in some instances, the information may not be posted as often, or it may not be available to the public right away, but upon request, you can get it. Now, the Fisheries Act, immediately when you think about the Fisheries Act, you might not think about NEMA, but the Fisheries Act speaks a lot about NEMA. In fact, it speaks about the creation of the NEMA area. It also talks about the NEMA management plan, which when we talk about protecting the NEMA and the biodiversity therein, the management plan plays a very important role. And in that management plan, it was updated, well, the last management plan was over 10 years ago. So gap areas that plan should be updated, one. And also there was a NEMA manager, which can help to alleviate some of the issues that we have, but the NEMA manager, once that person would have resigned, there have not been another NEMA manager since. Also, the Litter Control and Prevention Act. Now, this act guides, as simple as it says, litter it. If you litter, you get fined. Now, how many persons have seen illegal dumping within your area, whether Parham or Fitches Creek? Show of hands if you've seen it. Okay. Now, this law speaks to the amount that these persons should be fined. And from 2019, well, the pandemic started then. So 2021 and 2022, they've started to collect data in terms of persons who have been fined. We see that 11 persons have been fined, okay? And 3 of those fines were in the area that we're talking about, in the NEMA area. Okay, the fines are usually about $3,000. Now, in terms of a possible gap area, I don't want to share too much of my opinion, but when I saw the number of 3 fines in the NEMA area, you know, I personally seen more offenses than the 3 fines. So a possible gap area is the fact that you can have increased vigilance. Okay, and Stallone, we would have spoken about that some time ago. And reporting mechanisms. Persons need to know how exactly, if I see it, if I see illegal dumping, what can I do? And then finally, we have the Escazú Agreement. Now, the Escazú Agreement is an agreement that covers Latin America and the Caribbean, and it looks at access, environmental democracy, which is a very, very important concept. And it really is, I think, a very important and modern way to protect the environment. You're looking at multiple pillars, access to information. Now, we already have laws that speak to access of information. Access to participate in decision-making. We do have the management plan that speaks to that people should be involved, all right? But it goes on a little further. It talks about access to justice in environmental matters and also the protection of environmental defenders. And the agreement will define who exactly an environmental defender is. So the Escazú Agreement takes it a little bit further. Now, Antigua has been very receptive towards the Escazú Agreement. It was signed back in 2018 and ratified in 2020. Now, the next step is for it to actually be incorporated into our law. So that would be the gap area that we're waiting for it to be incorporated into law so that we can actually use it. Now, the last time we checked with the legal team, they said that it was at the Department of Legal Affairs, the Ministry of Legal Affairs. So it's making its way through the legal channels, we're hoping that it becomes law. And once that happens, one step further would be to incorporate that into the Constitution, because that would secure the protection environment in a more rigid way. All right, so this was just a snapshot of some of the policies that are in place to protect the environment, more specifically in the NEMA area, and a little review of where we are and some possible gap areas. All right, so next we're going to look at social accountability, and I'm going to have Dr. Bird talk about that.
Thank you all, and thank you all for being here. And for those who are coming late, we'll be doing a quick summary. So, and I think you'll be able to catch up and we'll be able to answer questions. So, collaborative social accountability just sounds like such a big word. When I first heard about it, it just was like, wow, way out there. But it really is very simple. What it really is, it's the idea of it and the whole process of it is to really build the relationship between community and the government in a partnership, a non-conflictual, non-combative partnership. So it's basically citizen-led, which is why you're all here. And we're seeking transparency, accountability, and responsiveness from public officials and service providers. Again, it's a non-confrontational approach. And what we do is we partner with different government agencies and departments. So we've already approached 4 different government departments: the Department of the Environment, National Solid Waste Management Authority, Tourism, and Community Development Division. And we have a representative here. Ms. Adams, yay, thank you for coming. And they have all agreed to come on board. We've signed agreements and to come on board with this process, and I've welcomed it. So what we will be doing is having, after tonight, building quarterly meetings between the government and the community to flesh out what are issues and solutions, and can work together again in partnership. It's not combative. And so after we finish presenting, we're going to have a discussion, talk about what service areas you would like to see us change. We will then present this to the different departments and get their feedback. And then the goal of it is how we can work together and find solutions. So we can switch to the next. So the goal of this is, of course, improved and better service delivery. We have empowerment of citizens, and it strengthens the relationships and builds, that partnership. This kind of process has been done in many places throughout the world. Antigua and Barbuda signed up to be a part of this. Not all the islands did, and that's why we were able to get the opportunity for funding. And it has been effective. So it is a new approach, especially in something like biodiversity. Usually it's done with where it's a little less tangible, but we think of course, it's crucial, it's timely, and our environment is so at risk at this point. We will be developing social accountability tools and mechanisms. We have a survey that we will be conducting. You can go to the next. That's one of the tools. And then we will get this ongoing feedback. And we'll also be developing a service delivery index, which is what we're here to do today, start that process. And we'll explain what that is. We'll get your feedback about what service delivery you would like to see based on the policies. And then we'll take that forward, look at what we flesh it out in this community. We're going to flesh it out in the Willackeys, Pears, Glanville's area, so covering NEMA, and then determine what the community would like to see as a solution and a change, and take it forward. And then those community meetings will be held quarterly and be formalized. And we've already had the agreements from the departments. And so these are examples of tools. So we are going to be doing a community scorecard, which is very simple. And some point in the evening, a person will be coming around, and it's just a quick survey. And then we will be doing as well, getting the service delivery. But this will all make sense. But basically, the community scorecard is basically a survey. Next, please. And so basically, we're going to start the discussion now. I'm going to hand this over to Dwayne. But before we do that, we did say that we're going to have prizes and giveaways, which we're going to start. We also have food. So we did promise that. We have food, we have drinks, so it's worth hanging around. It's very yummy food. And we have giveaways. So we're going to start our first one, I think. Our little
The basket.
Yeah. Did everybody? Okay. So
Drum roll.
okay, so I'm going to have Mrs. Oglam put that. Let me pick one. As you can see, they're all hidden. Okay. You can't keep. Okay. Yeah, see?
18.
Yes, it's a gentleman. It's my favorite number.
15 giveaways tonight. Can you imagine? This is the first time. That's why you stick around. Yeah.
No, don't put it back.
Oh, don't put it back. Yeah. Yes.
Ten.
Oh, sorry. I'm walking around with the basket. I should leave the basket back. Yes.
5. Wow. I don't know.
It's close to home.
Oh, winner.
15. Yeah, look counting. One more. 24.
Okay, thank you. So I'm handed back to Dwayne. Well, we put it all together.
All right, so can we go on to the? All right, so let's just bring everything in together in terms of a summary, and then we'll hand the mic over to you, okay? Now, we looked at what biodiversity was, the variety of different types of species, which actually includes humans. See that Nicola's got in her whiteboard to take notes on what you say. Also, we looked at what collaborative social accountability is. It's not just a fancy term, but at the core of it is collaboration in a non-confrontational, non-political way, because really the solution is working together. When we looked at the laws and the policies that exist, we identified some gap areas in terms of what these laws and policies commit to doing and where there is a gap. Now, firstly, we see that in public participation, a number of laws and policies would have emphasized that the public should be involved. And we identify that as a possible gap area. Also, the strengthening of NGOs and community groups. Okay, we identify it as a gap also. We also looked at the need to increase the access to information more and a reviving of the NEMA plan and the possibility of a NEMA manager. Because the NEMA manager could lead the charge in terms of the protection of the NEMA area and its biodiversity. Also, we identified a gap as increased vigilance. When you speak about littering and the Littering Act, how do we enforce that? And finally, ESCAZU, and following that process to ensure that Antigua and Barbuda incorporates it into law. We've already adopted it and ratified it. We just need to incorporate it into law now. So that's a summary of some of the major points. And now we'll get into the discussion. Yes, so.
So now we really want to hear from everyone here. And some thoughts in terms of, so you can, I think, take it back to the summary so that you can look at. So I don't know if anyone had any questions. I mean, that might be the first place for us to start. You may have some questions before we start. Does anyone have a question?
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Martin Dudley. Just a question with regard to the policies and legislation. I noticed you have the Environmental Management Protection Act 2019. I think we should be aware that there was a similar act in 2015. You're also telling us that this project came into being in April 2013, I think you said? The project. So what happened in 2013? There was something about this. No, there was something to do with the World Bank or the IMF or whatever the sponsor of this is that Antigua signed up to.
Yeah, so it's not anything, so they just to be able to become part available to get the funding for the global partnership, the governments would have to agree that they want to participate in a relationship between the community and the
Okay, so understood. So just a little side note to that, politics runs everything. It was under a different administration. We're nearly 10 years after that date. The Forestry Act, as I understand, has been replaced by the Environmental Protection Managers Act 2019, so it doesn't exist anymore. Yet you had it as part of the legislation that runs these things. And the Fisheries Act that is dated of 2006, it's actually didn't pass until 2012. So there's a 6-year gap there as well. Of the agencies that you guys are working with, you named 4. There's one missing, but what I did notice is that DCA was not one of them. And when you consider the strength and the overall mandate of the Physical Planning Act, I'm surprised that DCA isn't part of and wondering why they're not.
So Nicola, you want me to start and then you can. All right, so as it relates to the Fisheries Act, so we capture that to show the creation of NEMA and the NEMA management plan. Even if it is replaced, it doesn't dissolve NEMA or the fact that it's protected. As it relates to the DCA, it's a collaborative project. You know, the name is collaborative. social accountability. So everyone is welcomed. It's just that in terms of the priority, the communities are the first point, the communities, and then working along with government agencies. So it's not that we're against collaborating with DCA. Okay. Okay. Mm. Yeah, well, I mean,
pretty much dismissed it as we don't want to. And the evidence is clear that they don't by the activities that have occurred in the last 10 years, whether that means the NEDA project or warehousing in Finland or all kinds of things. You know,
yes.
talk about biodiversity hotspots. Yeah.
Yeah, we understand that. It's like, as Wayne said, we're not against working with any. This is, like I said, a non-conflictual where we have approached certain different departments who are working, and we can it's not stopping there, but this is what we have agreements to at this point, and we can keep growing. So it's just building those relationships, and this is our starting point. Yes. Well, we haven't done that yet, so we will just reach out, and there's just different ways that we already have partnerships built, so we will keep. It's like I said, this is not an end point. We have 3 more years to go in the project to keep building relationships. So this is a starting point. Yes. We understand, but equally, I mean, in terms of NEMA, the ones that we are working with will have a significant impact as well. So like I said, we're starting, we really welcome your feedback, but the feedback that, and we appreciate that. But what we want to start looking at, any other questions, by the way? But what we would like to get is your feedback on what you think you would like to see as services that the government has signed on to, that you feel as a community you'd like to see more work being done on or more services being applied. Does anything stand out for anyone? Okay, you look okay. See Stallone there. Come. All right.
Yeah, I was just concerned about only 11 people being fined for the amount of dumping that we have going on. So I think
Is that what you're saying?
yes, pretty much.
Honestly, are monitoring that. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Honestly, more service in terms of. Okay, thank you. Okay. Does anybody else feel this is important to them? Okay, so would you call this like a unanimous, yes?
So that point that you've just ticked, don't think it's confined just to littering and so forth. It's right across the board. And the environment, I mean that it applies to the Environmental Management Protection Act. It applies to the the Litter Act, all of them. There is not enough fines and enforcement of the legislation in Antigua. We talk about access to information. The Physical Planning Act, point 72C, I believe it is, and I paraphrase, that basically anybody can walk into DCA and request copies of documents that are in the register with payment of the appropriate fee. And I went through an exercise earlier in this year requesting documentation for maybe 15, 20 different projects. And the door was quite firmly slammed in my face. I was told that I need to apply in writing. I applied in writing. I had a phone call. Mr. Dudley, come and have a look at the documentation that you requested on May the 16th at 10:30. At 9:30 on May the 16th, I had a phone call that this meeting was postponed. And when I asked how long it was postponed for, it was indefinite. When asked why, they were having difficulty getting the information together. I don't think anybody needs to be Einstein to figure out I was never going to see that information, even though the law says I have every right to. Just, you know, Miss. So, Dr. Bird, the essence really, I think, of most of the reasonable environmentalists in Antigua, and I'm perhaps not considered to be reasonable, but I am, all we're asking the government agencies to do is to follow the law as written, really not trying to reinvent any wheels, but they do not. So,
more assistance sufficient.
Well, maybe you can explain a little bit more.
Well, it doesn't fall within any of these categories. One.
You can explain some more.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. What I was referring to, it has been my experience that enough is not done for fishermen. It is true that there's access to duty-free concessions for gears, equipments, boats, that sort of stuff. But fishing goes beyond that. And I will dare to say that fish is a very staple in our diet here in Antigua. Now, there's an issue that has been plaguing me for the longest while. Whenever it hits the 1st of June, we know that we're in hurricane season. We don't have easy access to securing our vessels. It is easy, or it is well and good if you have a little 50-footer. The minute you pass that, the challenge starts. That's one. Way back when, I believe the British had cleared some canals, Fidges Creek, Parham, and a few other places that vessels would have had access to in times of storm, like hurricanes and stuff. You would secure them there. And I personally have had the experience of securing my vessel in one at Fidges Creek. But over the years, it has been overgrown. The entrance of it has been filled with siltation from the water passage that comes through. It brings a lot of silt down from the land, and it makes it shallower for bigger vessels to get in. These are simple things that the government can do to assist fishermen, because all the marine agencies that deals with maintenance and management of boats in terms of repairs and haul and launch and all of that, it is very costly when you have to go to these places. In recent time, one that I've used, namely crabs, they've imposed, I don't even know what to call it, but let me just explain it. Unless your vessel is not insured, they're not going to take you out of the water. They're not standing any liability to lift your boat out of the water. So you must have an insurance to protect yourself so as you can have your boat maintained whenever, if ever you need to. I guess for persons in these sections to venture to places like Jolly Harbor, to have services like that thing. I don't know what Jolly Harbor's clause are in relative to the insurance and all of that, but I believe the government can do more to assist to make the day-to-day management of the fisher folks and their activities a lot easier.
All I could say is that we definitely take note of it, and we can.
If that creek is clean, managed.
So then it comes down to, what you want to see improved then is management of NEMA. That would be, that you would actually have. So does anyone need to know what a management plan would look like to help? Before you move on, yes. Yes.
Yeah. Inclusion of DCA and fisheries as it relates to policies.
Ah, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Because they will play a key role.
Policy. I mean, I think that the management plan is basically, because I will come to you, Martin. So the area is designated a key biodiversity area, and it's at threat for and risk for destruction of species. And so area, multi areas, ideally need to have a management plan to ensure their proper management, that the area is safeguarded, that it's healthy, if you're working, you're being again, dumping or development or anything. So without a designated plan, without a designated manager who's actually looking at the area, it's just left. There's no one to safeguarding it. And so to me, it's what it comes down to, getting a management plan in place to protect the area. And of course, once you have a designated manager, but we don't have an updated management plan, so, and we don't have a manager, so NEMA is just left. So the concerns, the issues, you can't. If you have any issues around NEMA and fishers or whatever, yes.
On whose portfolio does it fall, in terms of getting, manager? Is that something that a particular government agency has to do?
It's supposed to fall.
It was on the fisheries.
But it should also fall under under Department of Environment, because they oversee the environment as a whole, but NEMA. Okay, I see a little shaking hand. Do we have opinions?
No, I'm saying it doesn't fall on the environment, so it
It falls under, doesn't environment have some? I see a hand. Okay, so I'd like to talk a bit about the policing of them. Folks got people outside in that area. They're not quite aware of the boundaries. I don't know how many people have a copy of the boundaries of them. And it's affected their environment as well. In the photograph, it's a typical role in policing in that area. But they're not quite aware Wouldn't that still fall under, the management plan? Okay. This is all types of systems. Sorry? It's not going for, what's going there, so all types of systems. In the number area. People will step it in there. Right, and I know the coast guard, people outside. Obviously, they need to be involved with what is in our area exactly. Their role is. They come, I mean, I live in. It's a really good point. They come in Parham, and they're really, they come at 1 o'clock when nobody's there. I can tell you what goes on. Coast guard could play quite an important role. I also was both on a reef, a ship on a reef, I called EAG. I can't tell you the lady's name, but he told me, you don't have a boat, so I go to the sea. So, you know, you also talk about all these things. I'm talking about things that happen. They have a station on a reef, like boats running on them. They had a it's about 3 months ago running around outside Bird Island, Long Island, at the foot out. Then after a week, when you call it and the baby was done, I thought we were going to go to the phone. But then government.
So maybe that a suggestion is a proper mechanism for reporting, because it seems that because EAG is in the forefront and everybody knows EAG, then automatically they call EAG, but they're not the one responsible.
No, they're not, also they're not having cameras
Mhm.
in the number.
Can I make a point there? The question that the young lady asked, I smile, I was raising my hand all along, but I can speak to it because fisheries, EAG is not part of it. EAG worked as a volunteer organization. I am speaking now as the former director of Community Development Division, where fisheries was the one who earmarked the NEMO. And they had passed it over to Community Development Division to do the survey. And we had a person there that was designated specifically to work on it. She was Miss Kathleen Gota at that particular time. So since then, because I've left office 2 years ago, nothing is in place. So there's where the problem lies. So I don't know what stands in community now, and they should be, because they deal with community development, they deal with the blue economy, so it's right back in their plate. So I'm just putting that information, not on the zone officer. The zone officer is a zone officer to work with the volunteer groups. But the ministry have a responsibility, because it was when I was there, and it should be even more now because the blue economy is part of it. So the research needs to be done in the Ministry of Social Transformation, Community Development, and Citizens, what the new part? Engagement.
So what we need to.
Well, it needs to come out of here, but I'm just saying exactly where the foundation lie and what would have weakened. So we have to strengthen that and build on it so that we can move forward.
I guess I just want to say that.
The files are there. Should be there. So the research needs to be done, and then we take it from there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I mean, it's still not the files just disappeared.
Kind of going backwards, the NEMA, the boundaries of the NEMA. The seaside boundary, basically it goes out from Hodges Bay Club to to Prickly Pear, and then goes all the way around to Smith Island, which is the island over by Mill Reef, but on the Half Moon Bay side of it. The land side boundary Now, this is the curious one. Most people think it's where the mangroves start. It's not. It's where the high tide mark is. And while we're talking about this, am I right in this, Jana? With regard to the landside boundary of NEMA? Yeah. So we have a situation where Mr. Yidazang has gone and put all that lovely marl to suffocate the mangroves in the NEMA because he put it in the water. And I don't see any enforcement coming from the Department of Environment to address that. In fact, Cabinet sanctioned it. So how do we deal with Cabinet? And you've talked about this whole thing being non-confrontational. And it's very difficult when you approach the government agencies in a calm manner and they ramp it up and then things go. Sure.
Yes, National Solid Waste said that he wants to improve, reporting and monitoring and finding how we legal government. And then they wanted to partner with us to work for this and find solutions. So that would be an example.
Sure. Without going on gentlemen's fisheries concerns, most boatyards that are private boatyards, which North Sound Marina is, Shell Beaches, Jolly Beaches, etc., most boatyards require insurance, full stop, before they touch your boat. So it's really not a situation that the government can do much about. What did concern me is the amount of siltation that's occurred into areas in Fitch's Creek where people put their boats in hurricane holes, because I grew up in those areas. Those were my playground when I was a kid. I was privileged to have that. It concerns me that the amount of soil erosion that is happening, that it has changed so significantly, because prior to when I was a kid, which is a while ago now, the water in the entrance to those places was 10, 12 feet. And if you're touching bottom in a big size fishing boat, which is drawing 4 or 5 feet, that's a huge amount of siltation. That's topsoil. And, from an ecosystem point of view, and looking at Antigua as a whole ecosystem, obviously broken down into the smaller microclimates, et cetera, that is a seriously concerning situation for the loss of topsoil. And I don't see the various agencies addressing erosion issues inland. And when I'm talking inland, I'm talking, the Sorcolts Valley, Bendels and places like that, because at the end of the day, it does end up in the sea. And these are areas that are meant to be protected by the Environmental Protection Management Act. Yet you can, if you own the land, you can go and do what the hell you want and nobody will say boo. Fact from experience. So how do you address these sorts of issues? You hear of DCA going to Barbuda to do assessments, and basically it's a day out and a lunch trip, and they were on the site for 15 minutes and they didn't do anything. Fact. It's very worrying when you have such key agencies who are so negligent. Let me be quite hush up right now.
Oh, no, we appreciate that so much. Mr. Dudley, very much appreciate it. Thank you for sharing.
What I would like my good friend behind it to know and to bear with us is that this is a CSO, civil society organization. So we don't have the authority. We're seeking information now to go to these agencies, because yes, they have signed off on a lot of things. So that's why we come here to get the information. All that you're saying is true, but if we don't have the facts and have them in the right perspective and take them to the relevant ministries, then we will still be going around like spinning tops in mud. So just remember, this is a civil society organization, and we're trying to get the information so that we can pressure the government and the ministries into doing what they're supposed to do. I just want to make that clear so that too much stone don't throw at us. I'm out of government now, but I'm still working in communities. No, I'm just saying that for the fun of it.
Yeah, no, we do appreciate the comments, so keep them coming.
Good evening. I think, another thing, I came late and I missed the introduction, and I'm missing a lot having this introduction because honestly, I don't know who is here and I don't know what you're doing. I'm being honest. No, I'm sitting down here and I'm trying to catch up. I'm sitting down and I'm trying to catch up, right? But no, I'm not asking you to go. I'm not asking you to go back. I am honestly trying to catch up. Okay, and another thing, throwing out the acronyms like NEMR and DOE and everything. Some of us are not very familiar with those.
So it's no,
Okay. And the Escozo is, that's the,
So they named it after the city where this part.
No.
So what it is, it's an agreement that talks about democracy, environmental democracy. So it kind of empowers us to stand up for environmental justice.
So it's a great, it's put together for Latin America and the Caribbean, and she gets signed on for it and ratified. So if you've ratified, the government still has to put it into law. So otherwise it doesn't, they have to vote into law in Parliament.
and that was the previous slide, yes.
Or environmental justice, meaning you can't bring in an environmental case against the government like for infringement of environmental rights. So what it does is it puts environmental rights in the hands of the community to say, you can sue the government for going against their policy. So if they've said, oh, we did this development and you're like, they're supposed to get community feedback. So they didn't do, you can go and say, this is, you sign on to this and you decide the law. So we have several islands that have signed on ratified. Jamaica and Guyana are the only English-speaking islands that actually have put environmental justice into their constitution.
And that has,
which is more powerful, so you can take a case to the government. Right now, if we have a case issue, the public can't do very much. But the signing of the agreement into law puts more power into the hands of citizens. It's a very important environmental justice law that is, I think is a very important one that most people don't know. And it's not that complicated.
But it is, the government is asking that there's a movement towards, that there's pressure from the community asking for it to be passed into law, would be something that's a service that we could, this is, yes.
The exclusive agreement, Miss Senator Hyman Payne is the person who is responsible for Antigua. So outside of this meeting, if your official move for your association or the age or whatever, you can contact her. She is the person who is responsible for the agreement for Antigua about the Senate Hyman Payne. She is very helpful. But she is, and it's important for you guys to know, because as the gentleman said, what is aware, I have some of the knowledge because I was there before, so I'm sharing it so that you know.
Thank you. I didn't know that. Now I know.
Yes.
So I'll be asking.
So this something that the legal guidance is a certain way.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't need to make my point to me.
Okay, anyone else? We haven't heard very much from this side over here.
There's two questions there.
It wasn't a question, but you all just made the point, because I was gonna refer back to what Martin was saying in terms of what can be done to hold people accountable, and I was gonna point out the Escazú agreement. And someone said that it is pretty much up to the lawmakers, and this is just a social group, but I kind of disagree, because if we can petition for them to put the law, then it is our problem, because at the end of the day, it's your country.
And you're saying, we want to see the service, we want to see, so that by the end of this, we don't just hear a problem, but in things you're asking for solutions, what actions are actually taken to concern the citizens of putting forward. I mean, we can take the further to go on Australian law, but / constitution. Because the constitution, the ministry can't overturn the law. It can't overturn the
Constitution.
Constitution.
Yeah.
So, all ministries, they decide, and then they decide, and they can't overturn the law. But they cannot overturn the constitution. And, I want to point out that we do have this in Jamaica and Guyana. So it's not like it isn't done in the English speaking Caribbean. Two countries have already done it. We can replicate it. We can follow their process. So it's not something like, oh, we're the only one. So it is something very valuable. And this is what would give citizens a lot more power to all, pass this, to have a voice, present a case, to take action, and feel more empowered. And that's what this to me is like a star one in my opinion. Not that I'm trying to encourage anything, but I've already heard, you already said that, so there you go. I mean, they're all really important, but this has long-term, what all of them have long-term consequences, but this has generational, implications beyond about, sorry.
No problem. Good evening. My first point was going to be about the Escazú agreement, but we just spoke about that. So I agree with entrenching it within the Constitution, because as you said, laws can be turned over at any point in time. When somebody decides that they want to do something, they can just say, okay, well, no matter with that. The second thing was not actually a question. It was in reference to the point made about resources for fishermen. I think we had heard you speak about capacity building for CSOs and NGOs. I think that's something that can fall under the capacity building mechanism. If you put like an association together, if there's not already one, where they can come together, they have a larger voice, and they have a proper structure that can advocate for the resources that they need, especially for things like the boat insurance, for instance. If you're going by yourself, it might be difficult, but if you have an association and you're going forward as an association, as a group, as a CSO or an NGO, it's much easier for you to get resources and services like insurance and access to finance and other things that you may need.
Situation is, it will take a few days to explain to you. No joke. No joke. Very serious issue. For the past few years, we've been just Antigua. Well, apart from that, Antigua has been just overlooked because of the situation that has created itself. And we do have an Antigua and Barbuda fisherman cooperative society registered and booked. Was functioning until one particular individual got in and hijacked the cooperative. Funds, resources, everything. It will take a few days to explain exactly what it was. Hence our dilemma. It's a side of that.
Anything else from this side? Again, the other side is so quiet. Over here seems so, and in this middle, and then over here. What do you think? What was that? I mean, I'm just thinking.
You know,
On and then on.
it was thrown, it was thought was thrown up.
Yeah,
It goes too deep to start anything now because the people or persons who are responsible, they have to be held accountable. They have to take it.
I don't know the difference.
All right. So no,
Comments, we know Martin has.
Sorry.
When you're talking. Get the service, there be improvement. Yeah.
How is all of this going to be operated into the school system? Like perhaps a curriculum or something, because we're teaching children all sorts of other things, except for things like.
So like that, but then you want to see improved participation.
Not just participation, I mean, of course, education.
So we're in that position. A recommendation and then
Curriculum. Or.
Yeah.
Bad news is I have the microphone again. But on a serious note, to try and tick off a couple of those boxes of gap areas, what about citizen science? We have these amazing little things called telephones, which are very powerful computers. And we're looking at public participation and decision-making process. We need to have information to make decisions with. Strengthening the I'm just, go with me here. Strengthening capacity of government, put that to one side, and non-government organizations. This does the same. More frequent updating of information for the Department of Environment. If citizen science is used, think about the amount of information that would be collected, because the Department of Environment is only X number of people, and they've all got specific jobs to do. If at the school level, part of the curriculum, you can have some kind of platform, they probably already exist, to collect information, whether it be like for trees or for litter. You know, with litter, there is an app called Trash Out. And you take a picture of the trash in the middle of the bush somewhere, it gives a coordination to it, a brief description of what it is, that enables solid waste to go, okay, we need to go and deal with that, we need to walk with XYZ equipment. Why don't we use these sorts of things, creating those sort of platforms, but have them run by the citizens, not a government agency? Because, you know, the Escusa agreement is a great agreement, but under the present administration of government of Antigua, I think greenwash is a word that people need to be very cognizant of and see how clever the deceptions are. Now, people, if that rubs somebody up the wrong way, I make no apology, because that is what is happening. And our very environment and ecosystems are under threat because of that. And you'll have all the agents obfuscating and diverting attention and facts from things. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this actually speaks to what the lovely young lady here and Martin have had to say in terms of school curriculums. When I was in high school, there's actually environment cadets, and Shanna would have, can back that up. And it's a program that no longer runs. There used to be this competition, this recycling competition. You'd see us in, and Ariel would know as well. You would see us in our uniforms walking around town picking up plastic bottles and cans because you used to get a prize for the school who had the most recycled materials. You learned about biodiversity. You learned about all the things we're talking about here today. I can participate in this conversation because of something like that. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's something we had before. And then we can modernize that with the programs that Martin is talking about, like the citizen science and the trash app. And all of that, modernize it from us going and picking up those bottles in our uniforms on the street to using those things. These are things that exist already. And if we can leverage these platforms using the citizens, I think that that would alleviate a lot of the issues that we have.
So then maybe.
No, it was an after school program. It was an after school program. I think it was Department of Environment. It was used to be run by the Department of Environment. Yeah.
The main thing, I mean, some of the things that you have to approach and maybe put into the is environmental education.
Uh-huh.
Like to the conversation that people would want to yeah. Do we have any? Can we take another Okay, so we can talk about that. While we talk about that, we're going to do we have Did anyone have any more feedback? Any more? I think this has been very fruitful. And just so can you so what we're gonna do is so I've taken all this information, we take it very seriously. We're going into the Monkey area on Tuesday. We're gonna have a conversation with that community as well, get their feedback. Then we're gonna put together a service.
No, it's fine. They don't touch it. They just tell you what it is.
Yeah, okay.
Services. We're gonna share it with, we're gonna get your email address, we'll share it with you. You will, get your feedback, maybe you want another indicator or some wording you want to change, we'll get your feedback on those indicators. And then we take it to different departments. And so this is what we're, this is what the community wants to see as a service. And whenever ones that allocated, then, they will, we'll have that conversation with them. And then we come for a meeting between, which they've already agreed to, it's the, which day?
13th of December.
The 13th of December. So again, when we get your email address, there will be a formal meeting between these government departments and the community groups, all invited to come. It will be held at the DOE. And we will then take here the services that will be organized.
And DC will be invited.
Yeah, we'll invite. Yeah,
Yes.
but we also education, DC, but these will be quarterly meetings for the next 3 years. So, and they've all agreed, so we'll have it in March, we've already set the dates up, so they'll be ongoing. And the goal is that we create this kind of, these tools and mechanisms to then have this as systemic. Martin?
As public meetings or?
Public meetings, yeah, the public meetings. So this, and so, yes.
No, I was just gonna say, I don't think it's too much to add that we could probably put up demarcation sign because somebody mentioned.
It's brilliant.
Thank you. So these will be public meetings, but not everybody's email address, so you'll first will share the indicators, get your feedback, take it to them. They will say yes or no. I mean, they have to agree to some of the services. And then it's a public hearing based on these are the services, so you will know what we're deliveries, and then the discussion is there are concerns, and in each meeting we're looking for solutions. And it can be co-participatory, like in terms of like waste management. So I can share all those this, when we first came with this project to, Capital, then they did complain about the illegal dumping. I contacted National Solid Waste. 3 of their representatives came out, they didn't know about it, and then they had gone up the top. And they said they were very invested in doing something about it. So as part of that would be setting up monitoring cameras, having to speak to all those kinds of stations. Why are you like that? Why you see that? It's fun. No, but they want something that is, you know.
Then where's the minutes?
Well, no, we understand, but we have a strategy.
We have needed to show up.
Okay.
If I could just add, so I think what's different about this process is that it's a collaborative journey. So it's not just a one-off thing where we say, here's a list of concerns, do something and end it there. They're on, as Nicholas said, it's a 4-year journey where we're meeting regularly and we're collaborating with these agencies and we'll follow up. What about this? What about this? The community said that, and that ongoing kind of collaborative accountability, we're hoping that will make the difference. All right, so we do have some other.
How it works, we don't know the outcome, but we're all here to see what we can do to create change. So the point is, if we don't try, if we don't put in effort, we can't have an outcome. We can't tell you what it's going to be, but we can say it has worked in different areas. Let's see how we can move forward, yeah.
So in the absence of the community group.
They could, I mean, these are things that I think that when you go into kind of meetings, you can say what are solutions and ask your process. So, I mean, it's really easy to get up and talk about here's the problem, but you know, I mean, whenever I have meetings that I'm having, I'm like, okay, here's the problem. Here's action A, action B, action C, and this is an outcome. So we're really looking for, you know, concrete action. Yes.
I really know I'm a team that's gonna like it.
A team. Yeah, it would be a team. I mean, I think and that's why the difference too is that in these meetings, it's open. If you get communities coming in saying, we could do this, it's how you can come up with solutions. It's not just simply our own, like it's not matter. What solutions can we come up with? Can we get more involved? Like what can we do? Because in the end, it's all solutions. So what are the actions to take? And that's why it's collaborative, bi-directional, yeah.
I think this is a really on point, and the efficiency point to do, and there are communities. I think like people, the government side of it.
Yeah.
And take the social reason responsibility, and just that they don't look after.
Yeah.
You will assume a role that the government is failing to fulfill. And you'll probably find that because will then become knowledgeable of how that role works and the problems associated with it, etc., the government will be going, come and let's work together.
Right.
Yes.
Don't ask the permission, just get on with it.
And just to quickly big up Pabro and Fitchburg Community Group. They've been doing a lot of work in terms of beautifying their communities. But I think the benefit of including the government is that they have the teeth for fines and prosecution. And so that part is helpful too.
Just a step back. The boundaries, someone asked the boundaries of NEMA, but it was both, I don't believe the question was answered fully. How far does it extend out to sea? How far does it extend inland? Does anyone know?
Show you that, yeah, I'll show you, I can show you the map.
Well, basically, it goes from Beggars Point, which is where Hodges Bay Club is, that north point there, out to Pigeon, there. And then it's basically an average of about 7 miles offshore that takes you around the coast all the way around to Smith Island.
Well, basically, it's horseshoe reef and then out towards Parham Bank.
Yeah.
Parham Bank is extent. Right. I would have had one more thing is that when Dwayne was thanking
Pitches Creek and Padro for coming on board. The Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund, who is funding us, is also funding community groups in NEMA area. So I worked, it's been a long while, so I can understand they're kind of like, they took a long time that we can agree on, but it's actually going into place, and we will be having funding in terms of better management and protection of NEMA, and that will be like a 5-year. So I have worked with the groups in terms of writing the proposals, putting it together, and it can be ongoing, this capacity building. There's actually another call that we'll be working on. So there is funding to support the community groups. And because we were involved in this process, because really the call for proposals, the proposal templates are, they're quite difficult for any kind of group that's not knowledgeable about it's prohibitive. So because we were involved in this, we could reach out. So we have 3 proposals submitted by Padro, Fishes Creek, and Willackeys area, and they have been approved. It's just been nearly a year for them. So I knew you guys were approved. It's just that they've been slow in the uptake, but once we get there. So that will also be towards developing more community and capacity in some of addressing some of those things, as you said. So putting more power into communities. So there's actions that will be taken. And EAG is also in the line for the grant, but you guys run a little, you guys are a well-oiled machine. This is a little different. So I think we should go to the prize giving. We've had everyone here. We do have the food and drinks. So there's a prizes. Oh, okay, so let's get moving. Go ahead, Dwayne. Oh, I should put Dwayne here.
Uno. The gentleman is here for number 1.
What size t-shirt?
Okay, all right. No problem. Thanks.
Twenty-two.
Okay. Yeah, 20.
Okay, what size? Small, medium, large? Medium.
Just put you on the spot. No.
Yeah. Thank you.
21. 21.
Hey, shake that basket again, right?